So the other day, I posted on my personal Instagram page, actually not even the page, I just put it in the story, about a priest who was saying that he doesn't think that Catholics or Christians can vote Democrat, primarily on the basis of the abortion issue. And I put in there that I have a hard time disagreeing with him. Now, obviously some people didn't like the verbiage, they didn't like the accusation, and they didn't like the idea of mixing the politics with religion and those issues. I mean, I can understand that because it's a little tricky, sticky situation, and we've continued to believe things that are not true. So I want to hit on some of those things right now, but I do want to start off with the abortion issue. When you look at it and you know what is happening and you're well aware and you understand that since Roe v. Wade was passed in the 70s that 60 million babies have been killed, have been aborted, I think it may be time to look at that, because one of the basis of the argument to pass Roe v. Wade, which if you read the case itself, it is a horribly decided case, hardly based on law and hardly based on the principle of the right to privacy. But 60 million babies, regardless, have been killed, and one of the primary arguments was, well, what about in the case of rape and incest and, the unwanted baby, the mother having to take insane measures like using a coat hanger to kill the baby. 0.5% of all abortions have been from rape or incest. So to an extent, that argument doesn't fly. And with that, you have sort of the same exact procedures going on. It's just not a coat hanger, but it is just as brutal. It is the tearing a baby from limb to limb, shoving pliers inside the top of its head. And we have slowly but surely gone from early birth stages, like the first trimester, into the second trimester, and now we have, at least in some states, going right up until birth. New York being the state that recently passed a law that not only allows the mother to have an abortion for a reason or no reason at all, but it actually utilizes the idea of science by not being science, by instituting a law that says, by law, this is not a baby. This is not a human being. In fact, the law that was passed re-identifies what a human being is, relabels it. And it says, if it is not out of the womb, or if it's out of the womb and is not alive or breathing, it is not a human being. So they have taken the theory of a clump of cells, and regardless of the fact that the clump of cells, if you will, now has a heart, a brain, arms, legs, eyes, nose, everything that a human being needs to survive and thrive in life, is not a human being. We have reclassified what a human being is. And it's interesting that one of the arguments that is utilized to say, well, you can still be a Christian and vote Democrat, the party that strongly advocates for abortion, you can still be a Christian. Now, I would ask that very same question to those very same people and say, well, what about in the 1700s and 1800s with slavery, when people were trying to reclassify what a human being was and was saying that black people were not fully human. Would you accept that? And would you accept the fact that the people who defended that, and even at times tried to utilize the Bible to defend that, to defend slavery, would you say that they were Christians, that they could still do that and advocate for that, for the enslavement of people, and still be a Christian? Now that's something that you have to answer yourself, because the thing is you cannot avoid it any longer. Much like in the 1800s, slavery could no longer be avoided. It was known. It was understood what it was. And when someone like Frederick Douglass rose out from the South into the North and began to speak publicly, people began to understand the atrocities of what slavery actually was. And rest assured, there were plenty of people who turned a blind eye, much like many people today want to turn a blind eye to abortion. They don't want to look at the pictures. They don't want to hear the stories. They just want to continue moving forward in their life and trying to justify it as a woman's right to choose. Well, yes, we all have a right to make our own choices, but when do we draw the line on the right to make our own choices? Do we get the choice to kill a baby? And the thing is we have gotten so screwed up in our heads and in our thinking that we actually do not view the baby that is fully capable of being alive outside of the womb and living, if taken care of, obviously, as any baby must be taken care of in the early years of their life. You could go far into it. They're dependent. Shall we change the way that we view children? That as long as they're dependent on the parents, that they are not human? And you want to look at me and say, oh, that's an extreme way of looking at it. Can you imagine the idea of what we have allowed now, 50 years later after Roe v. Wade was passed, and making the argument of, well, we can have an abortion up to the moment of birth? Do you think that would have even passed for making sense? Do you think that would have even passed as not being absolutely diabolical and demonic? So what are you trying to uphold? Obviously not a Christian value of the protection of life. And it's shameful that the church in a lot of areas, in a lot of ways, have been silent as the grave on this subject because it's political. We have allowed the death and the murder of millions of babies to somehow slip from the moral question into the political question, and that is demonic. Now, you may say, well, it is the law, there's really nothing we can do about that, so we must move on, we must base our votes on what we can do about things moving forward. And so that is in the past. Let's look on the idea of multiple genders. What is the party that advocates for more than two genders, for the confusion of the child? What is the party that advocates for a child of 8 years old to be able to make their own choice about changing their gender? What is the party? You tell me. What's the party? Is I freaking know it's not the Republican Party. Multiple genders. Where parents are, and it's so interesting because I want to go back to what I was saying about the comparisons between slavery and abortion. The arguments are the exact same. It is arguing that this is not a human being. This is not fully a human being. This thing does not have rights. No rights. And the gender issue is sort of along the same lines where we're allowing parents and doctors in the United States of America to pretty much practice the same exact things that the Nazis did in the mid-20th century. where you're destroying the lives of children for the idea of, well, what can we create? What can we do? Can we change genders? Can we change what is natural? We're allowing the parents, and parents are doing this because we've slipped away from having it as a moral question to now it's a political question. Can we even touch it? No, we can't touch it. There's one party that advocates for the destruction of these children, and they think it's a good thing. They try to convince you that it's a good thing, that a child should be able to take hormones to change the structure of what they are naturally. Their confusion makes sense. This is nothing more than the mutilation of children, of innocent children. And if you know what was going on in the Nazi concentration camps and how eerily similar it is to what's going on right now, what excuse can you have? What excuse are you going to come up with? Is that another one that has become so politicized that no, we can't mess with that either? There's one party that screams the separation of church and state. One party that screams the separation of church and state, which is a lie. Where does the separation of church and state statement even come from? It comes from a letter from Thomas Jefferson to some Baptist ministers. And he was promising them that the United States of America would not institute a national or a state religion. Now, interestingly enough, the 13 colonies many of them had state religions. But Thomas Jefferson, who's the third president of the United States of America, assured those Baptist ministers, you don't have to worry, that wall of separation of a state church being pushed upon the people will not happen. That you have to pay taxes to the church. He was assuring them. But once again, it has gotten so twisted and convoluted that now we're looking at the separation of church and state and saying morality and Christian principles can no longer have a say in the political realm of this country. And no founding father thought that. No one thought that for the first 150 years of this freaking country. Like, who comes in and says that? It is an ongoing push to undermine what this country is all about. And the idea that, hardly any of the founding fathers were Christian, it's BS. It's a lie. It's unbelievable, the lies that have continued to perpetuate in the schools of this country, from kindergarten to 12th grade, all the way into college. Just continual, but you're fine with it. You're fine with it. That's education. That's they need to be able to hear a different perspective. I have a hard time understanding the Christians right now. This idea, there was a scripture that was quoted a lot when I was a kid, and it said this: be in the world, but not be of the world. And I have a hard time now even separating the church theology from the world theology, the way of how we think about God and the way the world thinks about God. They're too similar. They're almost mirror representations. And we seem fine. There's a party that seems fine with it. And speaking of education, we allow kids to continue to be taught the theory of evolution, which, if you're a Christian, you know that to be false. Hell, even if you're any type of educated in science, you know that thing is freaking flawed. The theory of evolution has never risen above a theory, and a pretty sorry theory at that. But Christians won't push back on that. We won't push back on that anymore. That has become, politicized as well. It's no longer a moral question. We can have our kids taught, no, God had nothing to do with the creation of the world. Or we can say, well, maybe the theory of evolution actually can explain how God created man and woman and the heavens and the earth. Maybe that'll work. Maybe just the Bible, they just skimmed over stuff. Maybe God didn't really give the full-fledged story when it was being written down. What excuses can we come up with? I don't know what excuses we can come up with anymore. It's the education system is a freaking farce. Teaching, the theory of evolution. Look, I'm fine with teaching the theory of evolution, but throw creationism in there as well. Or throw intelligent design in there too. Now there's more than just one, but there's only one party that really advocates for that. Only one party that really advocates for that. And the Republicans, obviously, they just sit down on their laurels and can concede defeat to this, as Republicans have done for such a long time. And maybe that's why people really don't like President Trump, is because he fights back hard. He fights back with tactics that have really never been utilized by the Republican Party, or at least not in a long time. It's very interesting. So whenever you have a president that comes in and kicks the door down, people don't like it, obviously. That makes somewhat sense. But speaking of education, sex education, that continues to be taught. Well, kids need to be taught sex education. No, look, the school is not supposed, the school, however you want to phrase it, is not supposed to be usurping the family. Well, doesn't the family is falling apart. The family, is not doing their role. Well, maybe if you would not advocate for a bigger role of the government to move in and consolidate for the family, maybe you wouldn't be running into this type of situation. Or maybe if you actually got into a relationship with someone of the opposite sex and you contemplated marriage, maybe you would want to, stick it out. Maybe be committed, maybe not be so amped up to get divorced so you can go start another family. I don't know. Oh, marriage is hard? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, here's an idea while you're telling me how dare I judge you for breaking up your family. Think about this. I've never started a family. Why? Because I don't know if I'd be able to commit to it. Until I find someone that I am willing to commit to, I'm not going to pretend commit and then break up a family. So, while 50% of the population out there in this great country of ours continues to get married and remarried and think that everything's just fine, go F yourself. All right, so Trump's a racist. Let's get on that for a second, shall we? Trump is a racist. I keep hearing this all the time. You've heard it a lot. When is it going to stop? When is that statement going to stop? I don't know if it ever is going to stop because people are insane and they definitely don't care about looking into anything that he says. Sort of like Mexicans are rapists. Like, did he say that? No, he didn't. And you know what? You can sit there and argue that point. But if you know anything about grammar in the English language, you'll know exactly what he said. But the media relies on you being a complete idiot. And to an extent, I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe you are an idiot, or maybe you're just so complacent with the Democrat Party or the parties in general. Man, look, you're getting offended. I don't freaking care. Anyways, you're so complacent, or maybe you're just lazy and you don't want to look anything up. You're fine with somebody saying he's racist, he's racist, he's racist, despite the fact that he's met with countless black people, black leaders. Do you remember Ray Lewis and Jim Brown right when he took office? And they wanted to talk with him about how to help the black community, and the black community went nuts on him. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't the black community that went nuts on him. It was the Democrat Party. It was the liberals. Oh, it was the white liberals primarily who went nuts on them. Why? Because you got to keep people in a hole. You know, you got to use this narrative, this racist narrative. And if anybody steps out of line, you know, if they're black, you know what they're called. They're called Uncle Toms. It's the most bizarre thing to me that the most racist people in this freaking country are the anti-racist people. And the most fascist people in this country are the anti-fascist people. It's a freaking joke. I don't get it. What this president has done for the black community, whether he's done it on purpose or on accident, is almost irrelevant. But the lowest unemployment numbers in the minority communities ever? Okay. He's ensured that historically black colleges and universities don't have to come to the White House year after year after year and beg for more money. He's like, look, there's 10 years straight. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Nobody cares about that, right? No, that's racist. That's racist, not making black people come and beg for more money. Great. The prison reform that's been going on, nothing. The opportunity zones that were created that continue to get shut down by the Democrats. That was Tim Scott's idea, a Republican senator from South Carolina. You know, the Democrats didn't want anything to do with that. Let's see, the First Step Act. Come on, I mean, you really have to be kidding me with the idea of the whole racism thing. He wants to build a wall. Yeah, because illegal aliens have been coming in by the droves. This is not pre-1914. I just don't understand like the logic. Every party, Democrat and Republican, have talked about securing the border. And then when you have a president who comes in and says, we got to secure the border, that terminology that has been used for decades prior is suddenly a racist epithet. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Like, get your head out of your own ass and think for a second. I know that's a difficult ask. Wars. Let's talk about wars. How many wars has he started? My God, how many wars has he started? So many. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Peace deals and war. Has not yet to start a war. Has ended a few. Battles. Got us taken care of in Syria. Shortly thereafter, he destroyed ISIS, pretty much, because he wasn't going after individuals one by one. He's like, just drop the Moab, the mother of all bombs. Drop that freaking thing on that tunnel, and let's get this thing done. I mean, ISIS was, the JV team of terrorists for a little while, right? According to everybody's favorite president, Obama. And then they came out of the woodwork and made Al-Qaeda look like the JV team. It's just amazing. And then they just continue to spread, and they spread across Europe. Like, freaking A, people. Like, what is going on? And then you have a president come in and say, this is some BS, we're going to take care of it, and we're going to take care of it now. And that happened. Qasem Soleimani, the most wicked man over in Iran, who has killed God knows how many of our soldiers among many of the other innocents over in the Middle East. And you are going to back the party that ridiculed the decision to take him out. The cleanest operation that you will see ever. You won't even see a cleaner operation in a freaking movie than that kill. And yourself is going to badmouth and say, he's going to start World War III. Well, last time I checked, World War III hasn't started. And then you've got the peace deals. Bahrain. Really? You've got the Serbs and the Bosnians coming together. You've got Sudan. Peace deals? Like, is that a bad thing? Oh, wait. No, I get it. You are the party of wars. Okay, I get it. You're an old Republican, or you're just an old Democrat, and you actually look forward to the wars. Is that what it is? I mean, is that what you're advocating for? More wars? Are we not in enough wars? Do you not like the fact that we're actually bringing troops home? Do you not like the fact that we're scaling down in Europe? Wait, I know what it is. You don't like how President Trump speaks so harshly to the NATO countries. That's what it is. Because forcing them to pay their fair share in the agreement, the NATO agreement. Right. Okay. Well, at least we got that cleared up. And guess what? Those countries are paying up, which means we don't have to be paying nearly as much money in our tax dollars to defend all those countries when they should be doing it themselves. Speaking of going back to the party that advocates for all the BS that is going on in the world today, I don't want to come across too harshly on the Democrats, but guys, the Democrat Party has completely and utterly changed in the past 2 to 4 years in particular, but over the past 10 years. Let's just call it what it is. They have changed so freaking dramatically, and you don't care. What's another one? Defund the police, right? Well, Dustin, maybe you should be asking the question of why they're saying defund the police. Why? Maybe you should be asking why they're destroying property, why they're burning down buildings and looting. Maybe you should be asking that question. No, I'm not going to ask that stupid idiot question. It's called personal responsibility. And if you do not have the rule of law, and if you do not hold people accountable to their actions, you inherit chaos, which is what's going on the West Coast. Hello? Look, going back to the education system, what you have is an indoctrination that's going on that this country is irredeemable, that this country is not legitimate. On what grounds? Grounds that has been made up. You can thank your old friend Howard Zinn, who is not a historian, but wrote A People's History of the United States, and just made stuff up. We experienced that here lately. Oh yeah, the 1619 Project. Thank you, Nicole Hannah-Jones over at the New York Times. New York Times really hasn't changed in the past 120 years. It's really just the fact that they've always been this way. Maybe they've always been this way. They just hid it a lot better. Sort of like when the New York Times was covering for Stalin during the suffering of the Ukrainians during the famine. But all good, right? So, what cities are being destroyed by Antifa and BLM? Which ones? Well, you guessed right. Democrat cities. Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York. All these places are run by Democrats. And guess what? Washington, D.C., places like that. And there are excuses made for all of these people who go out and scream death to, well, hell, now they're saying death to America in some of those places. Really weird. Death to cops. Defund the police. Defund the police. And do what? Put money back in your pocket? No. Give money to other government programs that will inevitably fail or inevitably be run so poorly that they might as well fail. You would actually pray that they failed so that you wouldn't be pouring money into something that is an absolute failure. But whatever. You will be fine with advocating for people burning down other people's businesses because you're under the impression that you're all working towards the same goal. And the ends justify the means. Oh, okay. I've even seen Christian friends. They're not my friends. They are people that I know, but they're not my friends. They were actually excusing what the Black Lives Matter leaders were doing by practicing witchcraft, which is being done, which is one of the reasons why they require that you chant the name of the person who was killed to bring that spirit in, and all of the witchcraft that is done through BLM, and it was one of the most amazing things that I'd ever seen from supposed Christians, but they're not Christians. They're Marxist, and they have fallen into some type of demonic ideology, which would be Marxism too. But they were saying that, any group out there are going to be some things that I don't agree with. And it's like, what? You're actually making comparisons to like groups that don't make the right choices in everything that they do. And you're comparing that to a group that advocates for killing police, defunding police, destroying the nuclear family, advocates for letting kids, choose their own gender at whatever age. Everything that is demonic, the BLM organization advocates for. Keep that in mind. But you will make an excuse for them because the actual quote unquote demonic activity that they are actually conducting, you're okay with. You're excusing it. Do you not see that as something that is very off about your Christian faith? You may want to look at that. Oh, wait. No. Don't look at that, because I got to keep in mind that the ends justify the means. It's funny, another person who is a leader in a Christian organization that I'm a part of actually said this: I could not care less what the Black Lives Matter organization does. And I keep hearing statements like that, like I could not care less what the Democrat Party does. I could not care less what the BLM organization does. I could not care less what women do. It's their choice. This whole thing, it's like, regardless of what it is, they should not be judged according to, like, no matter what they do. Look, is that an extreme way of looking at what a person says? No, because I'm able to actually look at what this organization does and then compare it to this freaking stupid statement that was made. I could not care less what the organization does. They just killed people. They just burned down businesses. They are looting wildly. They're destroying people's lives. They're beating old people up in the middle of the street. I could not care less what the organization does. They're advocating everything that is anti-Christian. Yeah, I don't care. I couldn't care less what the organization does. They are an anti-God movement. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care I couldn't care less what the organization does. Why? Because the ends justify the means, and you are freaking lost. You are lost out of your gourd. You have no idea where you're going because why? Because no one has talked to you straight and said, look, use this. Try to project into the future what will happen if you advocate for this type of chaos. There is only one thing that can happen. It is the tearing down of all of the principles. It's tearing down all of the traditions and institutions. Oh, wow. I just got it. You do want that to happen. That's right. Because this is an illegitimate country and you're fine with destroying everything because, like I just said to myself, the ends justify the means. I apologize. I get it now. The ends justify the means. Everything that is done, as long as it's toward this end, whatever the hell the end that is, if that is defund the police, if that is conduct a military coup, which is obviously in the works and has been attempted for the past 3 years in this Trump presidency, man, shooting, killing, destroying property, tearing down statues, rewriting history, 1984, right. If we can do 1984 in reality and get to this end, that will all be justified. Okay, thanks. Really interesting, really interesting. Okay, and last one, socialism. There's only one party. There is only one party that is advocating for socialism in this country. Socialism, which is the destruction of pretty much every country that has tried it. Democrat Party. You're fine with that, right? You're fine with it? Oh, wait. Have you even been taught anything about socialism? Or how it's utilized just to bring in communism? Oh, wait. You weren't really taught anything about communism in school except for, what? McCarthyism? Right. Okay. Well, interesting. You'll know everything there is to know about, say, the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, but you don't know anything about the Gulag in Soviet Russia. Okay. Do you find it somewhat interesting that your whole life, your whole existence has been pushed to one direction? That you will have everything omitted that you need to know so that you can view things just on one side? Why do you think that everybody, so many people, advocate for this anti-fascist movement? Because they've only been taught one thing. They haven't been taught the other thing. I'm not here to teach you. It's never worked. Socialism has never worked, and it never will work because it cannot work. And we actually tried it. When I say we, the Pilgrims actually tried it when they got here, because when they were brought over as Pilgrims as a actual company, a Plymouth company, that was one of the things that was instituted, sort of an agreement. Like, okay, there's everything going to be done in common. So if you work, you just throw it in the big circle, and then everybody takes their fair share, right? And it doesn't matter on how much you work or not, right? Well, people almost starved. In fact, people did starve. So they had to change that. So William Bradford, you can look into what he wrote, and he's like, we got to change things. Everybody gets a parcel of land, and you work that land, and you get to keep the fruit of your labor. Because I believe the Bible says something about if you don't work, you don't eat. Is that the Bible? Is it the Bible? Oh, we don't want it to be the Bible, right? Because we're socialist, right? Okay. You may be saying, Dustin, Democrats are not socialists, only a few of them are. Well, how many of the Democrats are actually speaking against the socialists within the party? Which makes you wonder how many of the Democrats are actually closet socialists. So once the power is transferred over to them, if that were to happen, in the House and the Senate, what would happen? Well, you can kiss this country goodbye, more or less. So you think that the Democrat Party is the party to go with because what they say sounds nice, when in fact it's actually absolutely diabolical. It is a practice of demonic activity. I mean, look, you're slaughtering babies in the most horrendous way. Dustin, that's not nice to say. I tell you what, how about we do this? If we're so concerned with the treatment of people, like people maybe on death row, we want to make sure that we don't go against the Constitution of cruel and unusual punishment, then why don't we start killing the worst of society the same way that we kill unborn babies? Like chop them up into pieces, maybe jab something into the top of their head and twist and everything. Just a thought, because that's humane, right? That's humane, the way we're treating the unborn. So something to consider. I mean, because we don't want cruel and unusual punishment for the most violent and wicked people in this country. So maybe we should do the same thing as what women are doing, voluntarily, I might add, with their own child that's forming inside of their body. I can't get over how that's even possible, how you can be convinced that something like that is right. I don't understand how you can be convinced that the absolute mutilation of the most innocent and most fragile creature, the unborn baby, can be torn apart, I don't know. Do babies scream when they're in the womb? Are they even capable of doing that? It's interesting. But you can be convinced that that's okay because you're not willing to look at it. You can be convinced that, oh, this little boy or this little girl wants to, they say, I'm a girl, and it's a boy saying that. Or it's a girl, and she's like, I want to be a boy. And the parents are like, it's a great idea, let's do that. And you'll be convinced that that's okay. That is not demonic behavior being acted out by the parents. That they are allowing their child to be mutilated. And you can't reverse that decision. You probably need to understand that. So you've got children, elementary age, who are having surgeries on their bodies, and that can't be reversed because the parents are so sick in their minds that they will not tell that child, no, you're a girl, or no, you're a boy. There are no two ways about it. But we have such weak people in this country. It's amazing. You have the continual education, and this is for all parents. Why do you keep sending your kid to a school where you know that they're getting effed up in the head with the sex education, the anti-God movement in schools? You're getting taught a false representation of history of this country. It's just like, it really is weird that only until it became extremely inconvenient for you that you started saying something about the education system. Like, nobody goes to PTA meetings, so they don't really know what's going on. But only until this COVID thing hit and it became an inconvenience for you, that you started complaining about the education system. I find it very interesting, but that's where we are as an American generation. And it's pretty much just about one thing. It's about us. and what's easier for us. I don't feel like hearing my child screaming and crying about, wanting to wear a dress, and he's a boy, so let's cut his penis off and start from there. Yeah. So, all right. So, if you haven't voted yet, maybe this is a way to think about some things and try to figure out, okay, does my faith have to align with my political beliefs? Or can I separate the moral questions and just turn them into political questions? Can I find some safety and security in that? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think you can. You may be able to do it for a while on this earth, but you're gonna answer to God. You will answer to God for who you advocated for, who you gave power to. That's what we do here in this country. You give power to people who may be totally screwed up in their head, but since they have a D next to their name, or yeah, they have an R, but sorry, I can't help you on this. The Democrats have gone so far away from Christianity, it's insane. I can't help you on that. There is no, well, Republicans are bad too. I'm sorry. Look, Republicans have their faults. But it's not even on the same scale. It's not even on the same level. So your argument on that is stupid. So if you want to say, after having watched this for a while, if you want to say, well, this is merely your white supremacy or your white privilege coming out, well, I don't know what to tell you, but I guess that's just another way of excusing whatever it is that you want to excuse. I'm Dustin Bass. I'm extremely pissed, and I've been thinking it through.